Across the wind-swept plains of our planet, beneath the suffocating canopy of forgotten jungles, there are whispers. They are not carried on the wind, nor are they written on parchment that turns to dust. They are messages from a past so deep it has nearly been lost to time. Messages spoken in stone. We are taught that the story of humanity is one of linear progression, a tale carefully documented in scrolls and ancient texts. It's a neat, orderly timeline, leading from primitive beginnings to our complex modern world. But what if that written history is dangerously incomplete? What if it's merely the final chapter of a much, much older epic? Around the globe, a different kind of record exists, a library of monoliths. We see them in the colossal heads of the Olmec, the serene faces of Buddhas carved into mountainsides, and the stoic gazes of the Moai on Easter Island. Mainstream science often labels these impossible achievements as tombs, idols, or ceremonial markers. They are explained away as the product of brute force and a primitive faith. Yet, the closer we look, the more the questions compound. How were they carved with such impossible precision? How were they transported, sometimes across hundreds of miles of impassable terrain? Who were the artists, the engineers, the civilizations that possessed the will and the means to create them? These stone sentinels stand as a testament to a past we barely know, a past of profound mystery and forgotten genius. They challenge everything we thought we knew about our ancestors and about ourselves. So, today, we journey to the far corners of the earth to listen to their stories, to stand before the silent giants, the impossible relics, the mysterious statues that scientists still can't explain. Our journey begins on a tiny triangular speck of volcanic rock adrift in the immense emptiness of the Pacific Ocean. This is Rapa Nui, or Easter Island, the most remote inhabited place on Earth. It's a land of rolling green hills, sheer volcanic cliffs, and a profound, palpable loneliness. And here, standing guard over this isolation, are the silent watchers, the Moai. Nearly 1,000 of them litter the landscape. These monolithic giants, some towering over 30 feet tall and weighing more than 80 tons, are a haunting presence. Carved from the island's volcanic tuff, they stand with deep-set eyes, long ears, and enigmatic expressions. But their most peculiar feature is their gaze. They do not look out to the vast sea, as one might expect from island sentinels. Instead, almost all of them stare inland, their backs to the ocean, as if watching over the ghosts of their creators. The mainstream academic explanation paints a tragic yet simple picture. The Rapa Nui people, having settled the island around 1200 AD, began an obsessive ritual of carving and erecting these statues to honor their deified ancestors. To transport them from the Rano Raraku quarry, it is said they felled the island's great palm forests, using the logs as rollers and sledges. This statue-building frenzy, according to the theory, became their undoing. In a classic tale of ecocide, they depleted their most vital resource. Without trees, they could no longer build seaworthy canoes for fishing. Their soil eroded, and their society spiraled into warfare, starvation, and eventual collapse. The story of Rapa Nui is often presented as a stark warning, a microcosm of what could happen to our own planet if we manage our resources unwisely. It's a neat, self-contained story of human folly. But is it the correct one? The closer one examines the evidence, the more this tidy narrative begins to fray. The sheer logistics of the log-rolling theory are staggering. The island's terrain is not flat. It is rugged, hilly, and uneven. To move an 80-ton statue
Miles across such a landscape would require an immense number of logs, a perfectly level track, and hundreds of people working in flawless unison. Some experiments have been attempted, but they have struggled to replicate the feat, even with smaller statues and ideal conditions. Then there is the issue of the largest Moai ever carved. Nicknamed El Gigante, it lies unfinished in the quarry, a gargantuan figure nearly 70 feet long. Its estimated weight is 270 tons. No rational archaeologist believes this titan could have ever been moved with ropes and logs. So why was it carved?
The Rapa Nui legends themselves contradict the official story. Their oral traditions do not speak of sledges or backbreaking labor. They say the statues walked. The elders claim that ancient priests used a divine power known as mana to command the Moai to move from the quarry to their platforms, or ahu. To archaeologists, this is mere folklore. But what if the legends are not metaphors, but memories of a forgotten technology? Some researchers have pointed to the intriguing possibility of acoustic levitation or sonic resonance. The idea, while speculative, is that specific sound frequencies, when properly harnessed, could drastically reduce the weight of a massive object, making it possible to move with minimal effort. Could the concept of mana have been a description of a lost science, an understanding of physics that has since vanished from the world? This idea of a forgotten technology, a mastery over the laws of nature, is not unique to Rapa Nui. The mystery deepens when we consider the collapse. Was the obsession with statue building truly the cause of their downfall? Or were the Moai a desperate attempt to avert a catastrophe we don't understand? Perhaps the Watchers were not just memorials, but functional objects, their purpose now lost to us. We are left with an undeniable enigma, a supposedly primitive, isolated society that quarried, carved, and transported nearly 1,000 colossal statues only to vanish into obscurity, leaving their creations to stare silently over a desolate landscape. The mystery of how a civilization could raise such giants only to fall echoes across the ocean. But what if, on the other side of this vast expanse, in the heart of a dense and humid jungle, another lost culture left behind clues that are even more inexplicable in the stoic faces of kings who seemingly came from another land?
From the isolated shores of the Pacific, our quest for answers takes us deep into the heart of another enigma, into the sweltering primeval jungles of the Mexican Gulf Coast. This is the Olmec heartland. Here, under a suffocating canopy of green, a civilization rose and vanished thousands of years before the Aztecs were even a memory. They left behind no written language we can decipher, but they did leave behind portraits of a truly impossible scale. In 1862, a farm worker exploring a dense thicket stumbled upon what he thought was a giant, overturned iron kettle buried in the earth. As he dug, a pair of solemn eyes and powerful lips emerged from the soil. It was not a kettle. It was a face. A 10-ton face carved from a single block of stone. Since then, 17 of these colossal heads have been discovered. Each is unique, wearing a distinctive helmet-like headdress, and each stares forward with an expression of serene, absolute authority. Archaeology tells us these are the faces of the Olmec, the mother culture of Mesoamerica. Flourishing between 1500 and 400 BC, they laid the foundation for all subsequent civilizations in the region, including the Maya and the Aztecs. The accepted theory is that these heads are realistic portraits of individual Olmec rulers, carved from massive basalt boulders. The source of this stone has been traced to the Tuxtla Mountains, a volcanic range over 100 kilometers away from the main Olmec centers like San Lorenzo. The official explanation for their transport is one of sheer human determination. Thousands of laborers dragging the multi-ton blocks on wooden sledges over land and floating them on massive balsa wood rafts down rivers. It's a testament, we are told, to the organizational power of these early kings. But a closer look at the logistics reveals a nearly insurmountable challenge. The Olmec possessed no beasts of burden, no wheeled vehicles, and no hard metal tools. The journey from the mountains was not a simple stroll, it was a treacherous passage through swamps, dense jungle, and across winding rivers. Could a civilization, at the very dawn of its existence, truly muster the engineering prowess to move 50-ton blocks across such an environment? The feat seems to strain the limits of their known technological capabilities to the breaking point. However, an even more profound mystery is etched into the faces themselves. Even more perplexing than how they were moved is who they depict. The features carved in the stone, the broad, flat noses, the thick, full lips, are not characteristic of the indigenous Amerindian people of the region. To many observers, past and present, they appear to be distinctly African.
This observation is the source of a fierce and ongoing debate. Mainstream archaeology flatly rejects the connection, arguing that the features are simply stylized portrayals of local rulers, perhaps depicting features of jaguars or other symbolic animals. Yet the portraits feel too individual, too human to be mere symbols. So why would the founding culture of Mesoamerica, the supposed ancestors of the Maya, carve monumental portraits of rulers who looked like they came from an entirely different continent? This has led to the highly controversial theory of pre-Columbian contact. Could a sophisticated seafaring group from Africa have crossed the Atlantic thousands of years before Columbus, influencing or perhaps even establishing the Olmec civilization? While the idea is often dismissed as pseudo-archaeology, the stone faces remain stubbornly silent, refusing to conform to our neat models of ancient history. Like other enigmatic first civilizations around the globe, the Olmec seem to appear in the archaeological record with their complex culture already largely formed. They leave behind these incredible heads, intricate jade carvings, and the seeds of a calendar that would later be perfected by the Maya before mysteriously vanishing around 400 BC. Who were they? Were they a lost lineage of Native Americans whose physical traits have since disappeared? Or do these stone faces stand as irrefutable evidence of a forgotten chapter of global migration? A chapter that would force us to redraw the maps of the ancient world. The enigma of a people who don't seem to fit their own geography is a deeply unsettling one. But as we now travel across the Pacific, we find that another ancient culture, half a world away in modern-day China, left behind artifacts that are not just geographically out of place, they seem to be out of this world entirely. From the enigmatic faces of the Americas, our journey now takes us east to the fertile plains of Songshan Province in China. For centuries, the official history of Chinese civilization was written in the north, along the banks of the Yellow River. It was there, we are told, that the Shang and Zhou dynasties forged the foundations of a great culture. The south, by comparison, was considered a remote, primitive backwater. Then, in 1986, an event occurred that would not just rewrite a chapter of Chinese history, it would tear the book apart. Workers at a brickyard, digging for clay, struck something hard. It wasn't rock. It was a pit filled with priceless treasures that had been deliberately broken and buried for 3,000 years. As archaeologists began to excavate, they unearthed a trove of artifacts that defied all logic and expectation. Over 1,000 objects of jade, gold, and burned elephant tusks. And then they found the bronzes. These were not the ritual vessels of the northern Shang. These were colossal, otherworldly figures.
They had angular faces with vast, protruding eyes, some shaped like cylinders, others with pupils like staring diamonds. They had enormous, stylized ears, listening for secrets from another world. They looked like nothing ever found in China or anywhere else on Earth. The accepted historical model simply had no place for Sanxingdui. The sheer scale and technical sophistication of the bronze casting were equal to, and in some cases surpassed, that of the Shang dynasty. The artifacts included a stunning 8-foot-tall bronze statue of a standing man, the largest of its kind ever found. They uncovered a magnificent bronze spirit tree, nearly 13 feet high, with intricate branches, birds, and dragons. This was not the work of a primitive tribe. This was the heart of a powerful, wealthy, and technologically advanced Bronze Age civilization that had flourished, completely unknown to history, at the very same time as the Shang. The implications were staggering. The story of ancient China was not a single linear progression from one source. Here was evidence of a parallel, equally brilliant culture that had been utterly lost to time. But unlike the Shang, who left behind oracle bones covered in early Chinese writing, the people of Sanxingdui left behind nothing. Not a single character, only these silent, haunting figures. This silence forces the artifacts themselves to speak, but their language is one of profound mystery. What or who are we looking at? The academic consensus suggests these are representations of gods, myths, or powerful shaman kings. The bizarre features, it is argued, are not literal but symbolic, intended to convey supernatural power, eyes that could see into other realms, ears that could hear the voices of spirits. The masks, perhaps, were mounted on wooden bodies and dressed in ceremonial robes.
But to many, these explanations feel inadequate. The features are too specific, too consistent across multiple sculptures to be mere fantasy. They do not resemble any known iconography from ancient China. This has led to more speculative questions. Could the artists of Sanxingdui have been depicting something they had actually seen? Were they creating portraits of their gods, or were they creating portraits of visitors, beings not of this world? The alien-like appearance is so striking that it's impossible to ignore the possibility that we are looking at something far stranger than just a forgotten religion. Ultimately, Sanxingdui represents a completely independent branch of the human story, a civilizational island that rose to incredible heights of artistic and technical achievement before being completely erased. They were a people who created a universe of imagery unlike any other, who held beliefs and saw a world we cannot even begin to comprehend. We are left with a chilling set of questions. Who were the people of Sanxingdui? What gods did they worship with these magnificent and terrifying bronzes? And perhaps the most unsettling question of all, why did they, around 1200 BC, methodically smash their sacred treasures, burn them, and bury them in deep pits before completely vanishing from the face of the earth? The discovery of a lost civilization that rivals the known greats is a humbling revelation. It suggests our history is filled with immense gaps. But what if we were to find something that doesn't just challenge the map of ancient history, but challenges the very timeline itself? What if we found proof of high culture and monumental construction not from a lost kingdom, but from a lost era of humanity, long before the first cities were ever meant to exist?
Our search for answers has led us from lost kingdoms to forgotten peoples, but all have existed within the familiar framework of civilization. Now we journey to a place that rips that framework to shreds. We arrive at an unassuming, rounded hilltop in southeastern Turkey. For millennia, locals called it Göbekli Tepe, or Potbelly Hill. It was a place of quiet pilgrimage, believed to be the resting place of a long-forgotten saint. But in 1994, the late German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt looked at the hill and saw something else. He saw the subtle work of human hands on a massive scale. And when he began to dig, he uncovered a structure that, according to our history books, simply should not exist. He found the world's first temple. Not a village, not a tomb, but a sprawling complex of massive circular enclosures defined by enormous T-shaped pillars of carved limestone, each weighing up to 15 tons and standing 18 feet tall. To understand the earth-shattering importance of this discovery, we must first remember the story we have always been told about our own origins. For hundreds of thousands of years, humanity lived in small, nomadic bands of hunter-gatherers. Our existence was defined by the constant search for food. Then, around 10,000 years ago, everything changed with the Neolithic Revolution. We learned to cultivate crops and domesticate animals. This agricultural breakthrough allowed us to create a food surplus, which in turn allowed us to abandon the nomadic life and build permanent settlements. From these first villages, cities grew. With cities came social hierarchy, specialized labor, and eventually the luxury of complex organized religion and the ability to construct monumental architecture. The formula was simple and linear. Agriculture led to settlements, which led to civilization and temples. It was the bedrock of modern archaeology. And then, Göbekli Tepe was dated. The results that came back from the labs were not just surprising, they were an academic bombshell. The deepest, oldest layers of the site were dated to an astonishing 9600 BC. Let that sink in. This is 6,000 years older than Stonehenge. It is 7,000 years older than the Great Pyramid of Giza. It is by a staggering margin the oldest megalithic structure ever found on Earth. And most importantly, it was built by people who had not yet invented pottery, who had not smelted metal, who had no writing, and who, crucially, had not yet developed agriculture. The people who quarried, transported, and intricately carved these 15-ton pillars were hunter-gatherers. This single fact inverts the entire timeline of human history. The long-held formula was wrong. Here was proof that so-called primitive nomads were capable of incredible feats of organization, engineering, and symbolic expression. At Göbekli Tepe, the temple came first. Klaus Schmidt himself proposed a revolutionary new theory. What if it was the desire to build this sacred gathering place that kick-started civilization itself? The immense effort of construction would have required different bands of hunters to cooperate, to organize, and, most importantly, to stay in one place for long periods. The need to feed this massive workforce may have been the very catalyst that spurred the invention of farming. In this new model, it was our search for meaning, our quest for the divine, that gave birth to the modern world. The temple led to agriculture, which led to cities.
But what was the purpose of this great temple? The pillars are not crude blocks. They are covered in masterful, high-relief carvings of animals, snakes, boars, foxes, and menacing scorpions. Vultures feature prominently, often associated with death and excarnation. Some researchers, noting that Göbekli Tepe was built immediately after the end of the last ice age, a time of violent climate change and mass extinctions known as the Younger Dryas, theorized the site is an astronomical observatory. Could the animal symbols represent constellations, a map of the sky created by the survivors of a global cataclysm to preserve the knowledge of a world that was lost? Perhaps the most profound mystery is what happened to it. After more than 1,000 years of use, Göbekli Tepe was not conquered or destroyed. Around 8000 BC,
Its creators deliberately and painstakingly buried their entire creation. They backfilled their magnificent temple with millions of cubic feet of earth, rubble, and bone, preserving it perfectly for the next 10 millennia. Why would a culture bury its most sacred cathedral? Was it to protect a great secret? Or to create a time capsule, a message in a bottle for a distant future that had forgotten its own deep past? The act of burying a treasure to preserve it for eternity speaks to a profound vision. But while the builders of Göbekli Tepe sought to preserve a memory, another, much later civilization sought to build an army to conquer not just the future, but death itself.
The desire to preserve a legacy, to leave a message for the future, is a powerful human impulse. But what if that impulse is taken to its absolute extreme? What if a ruler sought not just to be remembered, but to build an empire that could defy death itself? Our journey now leads us to the heart of China, to a discovery that revealed the scale of such an ambition. In March of 1974, a group of farmers in Lintong County were digging a well to combat a drought. As their shovels sank into the dry earth, they struck something hard. It was not a rock. It was the fired clay head of a man, with realistic eyes, a carefully sculpted mustache, and an impassive stare that had not seen the light of day for over 2 millennia. The farmers had unknowingly stumbled upon one of the greatest archaeological discoveries of all time. They had found the advance guard of a silent subterranean army. As archaeologists began to excavate, the true mind-boggling scale of the find was revealed. Pit after pit contained the spectral ranks of a life-sized military force. Thousands of infantrymen, archers, charioteers, and cavalry horses, all crafted from terracotta, stood in battle formation, ready to march for their emperor. History tells us this ghost army belongs to one man, Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of a unified China. A brilliant, visionary, and utterly ruthless ruler from the 3rd century BC, he was a man of grand ambitions. He standardized China's language and currency, began construction of the Great Wall, and infamously burned countless books to erase the history of his rivals. But his greatest obsession was his own mortality. He dispatched expeditions in search of the mythical elixir of life and spent decades planning his own journey into the afterlife. The Terracotta Army was to be his eternal honor guard, a force of over 8,000 soldiers, built by a reported 700,000 conscripted artisans and laborers. It was a perfect replica of his imperial legions, meant to protect his soul and allow him to continue his conquests in the next world. This explanation, however, barely scratches the surface of the mystery, for these are not mass-produced identical statues. A close examination reveals a level of artistry and technology that is profoundly challenging. Every single soldier, from the highest-ranking general to the humblest archer, has a unique face. They are individual portraits with distinct hairstyles, expressions, and features. How did the artisans of the Qin dynasty achieve this level of mass-produced individuality?
When they were first unearthed, the warriors were not the monochrome figures we see today. They were painted in brilliant, vibrant lacquers of purple, red, and green, which tragically flaked away and faded within minutes of being exposed to the air. We are seeing only the pale ghosts of their original splendor. Most astonishingly, their bronze weapons, swords, spears, and crossbow triggers were found to be in pristine condition, still razor-sharp after 2,200 years, buried in the damp earth. Analysis revealed that they were coated in a thin, protective layer of chromium dioxide. This advanced chrome plating is a technology that scientists in the West only developed in the 1920s. How did Qin Shi Huang's craftsmen master a technique that was 2 millennia ahead of its time? And yet, all of this, the thousands of unique soldiers, the lost colors, the futuristic technology, is merely the opening act. This entire world-famous army is just the perimeter defense for the true secret, the tomb of the emperor himself, a 250-foot-tall, pyramid-shaped mound that lies sealed and untouched just a mile away. What lies inside that mound has been the subject of legend for centuries. Our only written account comes from the Han Dynasty historian Sima Qian, who described a subterranean palace of unimaginable scale. He wrote that the emperor's sarcophagus floats in a tomb chamber that is a perfect microcosm of his empire. The ceiling is a map of the heavens, studded with pearls to represent the stars. The floor is a map of his earthly domain, with China's great rivers and oceans replicated in channels of flowing liquid mercury, made to circulate by mechanical means. And to protect it all, Sima Qian wrote of deadly traps, crossbows and arrows rigged to fire automatically at any intruder. For 2,000 years, this was dismissed as a fantastical legend. But modern science has revealed that the legend may be terrifyingly real. Scientific probes of the soil in the tomb mound have detected levels of mercury that are hundreds of times higher than the surrounding area. The rivers of mercury are almost certainly real, which gives terrifying credence to the stories of the traps that guard them. The unopened tomb is a perfect time capsule, a sealed world from an emperor who tried to reboot history. What lost knowledge, what priceless treasures, what secrets of his advanced technology are locked inside with him? The Chinese government, out of respect for the emperor and fear of destroying the tomb's fragile contents upon opening it, has forbidden its excavation. The mystery is right there, beneath our feet, but it remains tantalizingly out of reach. This ghostly army, guarding its eternal secret, presents us with the ultimate archaeological paradox, a mystery we might have the power to solve, but choose not to. It reminds us that for every answer we unearth, countless more remain buried, silent, and waiting. The statues we have seen on our journey are not just objects of stone and clay, they are question marks, each one challenging the story we tell ourselves about who we are and where we came from.
Our journey has taken us across the globe and deep into the annals of forgotten time, seeking answers from storytellers who speak not in words, but in stone. On the lonely shores of Rapa Nui, we stood before the silent watchers, questioning how a supposedly primitive society could command giants to walk. In the humid jungles of Mesoamerica, we saw the faces of an unknown people, their features a profound riddle of ancestry and origin. From a buried pit in China, the otherworldly masks of Sanxingdui stared back, the haunting relics of a brilliant civilization that history had completely forgotten. In the Anatolian highlands, we found Göbekli Tepe, a temple older than civilization itself, a sacred place that rewrites the very first chapter of our settled story. And finally, in the heart of China, a ghost army of clay stands eternal guard over a tomb of impossible secrets and lost technologies, a mystery we dare not disturb. Individually, each of these is a fascinating puzzle, but taken together, they form a mosaic, a picture of the ancient world that is profoundly different from the one found in our textbooks. These are not just beautiful artifacts to be admired in a museum. They are data points of defiance. They are pieces of hard evidence that refuse to fit the simple, linear narrative of human progress, a steady march from primitive hunter to sophisticated city dweller. These statues speak of impossible engineering, of lost artistic traditions, of advanced scientific knowledge, and of timelines that simply should not exist. It forces us to confront the most fundamental question of all. What if we are a species with amnesia? What if the great civilizations we call ancient, the Egyptians, the Sumerians, the Chinese, were not the dawn of human innovation, but were instead the heirs of a legacy? What if they were rebuilding upon the faint memories of a far older, far more advanced global chapter of the human story, one that was nearly erased by a great cataclysm deep in our past? In this light, these statues are no longer just art. They become echoes. They are the fragmented memories of a lost world, the last remaining signposts from a history we were never meant to forget. The ground beneath our feet is not just soil and rock. It is a library of unread books. The story of humanity is not finished and bound. It is a living investigation, and the most astonishing discoveries are still waiting. The silent storytellers of stone have not yet revealed all their secrets. They wait patiently in deserts, jungles, and beneath the hills of our modern world. They are a permanent challenge to our certainty, a timeless reminder that the human story is far older, far stranger, and far more magnificent than we have ever dared to imagine. The greatest chapters may be the ones we have yet to unearth.